Hi, I'm Rohit, and today we have with us Kartik. Kartik is the co-founder and CTO of Starsky Robotics. And Starsky Robotics is an autonomous trucking company. And
we try to call it driverless
trucking company. And you guys went through YC in the summer of 2016.
Yes.
So you've been around 2.5 years or so.
Yeah.
In that time, you've raised more than $20 million in funding from leading VCs such as Sashta Ventures, Data Collective, and YC itself. You're originally from India. You went to IIT BHU, did a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, then came to CMU for your master's in robotics. And funnily enough, Starsky is your second company.
Yes.
And your previous company was Updroid. Right?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's actually start there, and then we'll go back in your background. So, so you graduated from CMU, and right off the bat, you started a company. How did that come about?
So I didn't start off with the idea. One of the things that I will fill into my background is before going to CMU, I actually worked at an automobile company in India, Maruti Suzuki. And I absolutely hated the fact that it was a large corporation and I didn't have visibility. So just the idea of just knowing more and leading the charge of development was attractive to me. But that was still an abstract thought. There was no concrete execution associated with it. And one of my friends who I got to know during my CMU program actually came in with an idea, came into the program with an idea, and by the middle of our session, he started just talking through it with some of his friends. Fortunately, I was one of them, and we bounced around ideas and then realized that I think we can work together, and we had similar interest in actually pursuing goals like these, and so also complemented each other in certain skill sets. So by the time we were in our second semester, I think we already had decided that we are going to do this.
And what was the idea itself? And how did it transform to whatever so you were on it for a couple of years, at least? Yeah,
it was. I think we were working on it for a total of 2.5 years. We started off with a problem that we saw ourselves. We were part of a robotics group at CMU, and one of the main challenges that we had was the cutting edge work that we wanted to do was part of just a 20% time slice that we would dedicate. The rest 80% of the work was dedicated just to redo everything that was done before, like building the mechanicals, building the electronics, building all the things that were already done before, and the actual software that we needed to build, or the actual mechanical joint or hardware that we wanted to build, just formed the last 20% of the work. So that was a problem. I think that still is a problem, but we saw that firsthand when we were working at CMU for our projects, and while we were thinking about it, we realized maybe we should have a platform that that people can build on, and initially it was a simple idea, like you can think about it as a Raspberry Pi equivalent, but for robots, specifically designed for that. And then we over time we realized that was still a really niche market, and we started growing on that idea, and built a full hardware kit around it for people to get started on robotics.
And what were there any common use cases you were thinking people would be using it for? Like are these Boston Dynamic robotic arms, or something more simpler, like something to carry in a warehouse or something like that.
Yeah. So I would say that was the biggest mistake that we made in our in my last startup. We started off with a use case that was pretty close to our heart, because we faced that problem. The unfortunate thing that was that it was still a niche product. There was a niche market, and we just went ahead with it. We never, I guess, confronted the idea that there was that we had to talk to consumers
Right.
or our customers,
Right.
which took us in this vicious cycle of us correcting our assumptions and or us self-correcting ourselves, and not reevaluating what our core assumptions were,
Right.
which meant that we had some use cases in mind, but those were not MVP use cases, which means that we had to be as big as Google or Apple to even roll out that product for people to effectively use it.
Got it.
Yeah.
So initially you didn't talk to consumers and you
Yes.
built a product because you thought you were the consumers
Yes.
and you were building what you wanted. The feedback loop from outside customers who were gonna probably pay for this
Yeah.
was not validated.
Was not there, and that was a really big lesson that I learned.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that was the startup itself, but I'm
Yes.
also very curious about sort of the dynamics that exist during that time. So what did your parents say? You may have spent a lot of money taking student loans and whatnot
Yeah.
to study at CMU, and then
Yeah.
you just go ahead and do a startup and not get a job at some
Yeah.
big tech company like other people do.
Yeah, and that was a really interesting dynamic. I did got ourselves in a huge debt
Right.
while going through CMU. It's not cheap. Spoiler alert. But I think my parents were supportive. We had few discussions. I won't say that like we are really well to do back in India. We are okay.
So like a middle class family,
Yeah, a middle class
parents would
family.
have to take a loan or something like that to
Yeah.
pay for education. The money is not in cash.
Yes, yeah, and so we didn't have like spare cash to pay for a huge tuition. But I think my parents generally were supportive, and this was of course a risk, and I like they just believed.
Right.
At the end of the day, they just believed. There's no trick to that.
Right.
If you and yeah, hopefully like that actually turned out. I hope that turned out well for them as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm always like, as I talk to other people, like there's always this personal dynamic that may prevent some people from starting companies,
Yeah.
like responsibilities, paying a student debt is a big one,
Yeah.
especially if you are coming from India, and everyone else is going for tech jobs and they're making like $150,000 and you are toiling away in a small office, trying to start a company.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was definitely not present was attraction to just big numbers. I think we even during those discussions about what should I do, what shouldn't I do, and what was my decision, it was we never discussed the amount of salaries that I could get. That was never a thing. My reason for being in US was to find a better job, was to get to do something that I wanted to do, that I enjoyed doing, and this was a step in that direction. If I and this is something that my parents and everyone who I respected and cared about their opinion knew that this is the reason why I came here. This is the reason why I left my job back in India.
Right.
So that was not a discussion or an aggressive discussion that we had.
Okay.
The discussion was more around amount of risk this is, and stuff around that.
Did you set up a timeline for yourself? We are going to try for X amount of time, and these are some of the milestones, and if it doesn't work out, then we move.
Yeah, I think I did set a timeline for sure. There was a timeline around. For this particular program that I was in at CMU, we had a co-op requirement, and I was co-oping in my startup for 7 months, and my initial timeline was to have clarity on what exactly is the future by the end of that co-op period. As all plans go, it was never executed properly.
Right.
Even after the end of that co-op period, I didn't have enough visibility even for the next few months.
Right.
On top of that, I think there was as we all have a forced timeline, which is visa related.
Right.
So that I think played a bigger part in defining my timeline than anything else.
Actually, that's a good sort of segue to the next important question about visa. So you graduated, you're probably in OPT, which is optional practical training.
Yeah.
How did you navigate the visa situations? Were there any challenges around that time that you?
Yeah. So so OPT doesn't have a lot of restrictions in terms of working in terms of work. So OPT was easier for me to, and we also had the STEM extension. So I pretty easily navigated the first 2 years or 2.5 years. Pretty easily. There were no big restrictions. Transferring into H1B came with all its problems.
Right.
The very first one was crossing my fingers, thinking about actually going through actually getting into the lottery.
What year was that?
This was 2015, I think.
Yeah,
2015, yes.
So I think I got mine also in 2015, and I remember specifically there was like 1 in 4 chances of me getting the H1. So it must have been around that for the last few years. The number of applications.
Yeah, thank God I didn't actually look at the chances. I just applied. Just applied and then fortunately got it.
Right.
It was also weird because I had to go back to India and get my visa stamp. And this was right before a big demo that we were going to do, and I thought that I would be able to come back, and they put me on administrative processing.
So that's 221G, a pink slip. You got a pink slip.
Yes. And I was stuck in India for I think a month, working at night there, and like having regular video chats with my team here. People who were actually overseeing our demo were getting really frustrated because I was the person who was supposed to present, but I was not there, and we in the middle of all of that decided that okay, my co-founder, who was Mike, is going to present, and we literally pivoted our plans in the middle of everything, specifically because I was stuck in India.
And this was your Updroid time. So
this was Updroid time.
So
yes.
really, because you got a pink slip, you were not able to present at a really crucial time.
Yes.
And I guess it's for people who are not doing startups, it's also gets sometimes difficult to appreciate that how important some of these moments are. If your presentation goes well, maybe you'll get the next round of funding, or if something goes bad, then you are just done.
Yeah, it's actually it's a pretty big deal. We even at YC, like YC itself carries a really big and heavy name, but demo day at YC still needs to go really well. You can like talk about how good and prestigious YC, like just getting into YC is, but if you don't do well at demo day, there are some repercussions to it. The same thing goes with every other every other presentation, every other demo
Right.
that we give, whether it's a big or small incubator.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, makes sense. So you did Uptroid, and then eventually you decided to sunset that
Yes.
company. So tell us a little, because you are on H-1B visa for Uptroid,
Yeah.
and now then you again didn't go to a company. You again started a company. So tell us a little bit about how you again decided to do another startup,
Yeah.
and then did all the how the startup came about, and then did
Yeah.
all the visa. Jumping.
Yeah. So this is end of 2015. We were running out of cash. We had one last chance of going into CES. We like sort of realized, at least I definitely realized that there is so much I can do. It was also like a really emotional. This generally is a really emotional time when you have to tell yourself that the thing that you were working on, that you believed in so much, might actually not be true. So generally it is an emotional time, and I just wanted one last confirmation that I know that this was wrong, not exactly wrong, but this might not be the right way to do it, or this might not be the right time to do it, and I wanted that confirmation. So we had this one last shot of going and presenting at CES, and I cobbled together however much money a company could afford, and went there with all the four team members, and finally got the confirmation at CES that yes, this is an effort in vain, at least from the product perspective. So I called it out, said that okay, this is not going to work. This is actually a good time for us to just call it off. We should start looking for other jobs and all that. I think everyone knew that, so it was a heart to heart with all the team members, and everyone went ahead and quickly started looking for jobs. All the other ones were also U.S. citizens, so they didn't have the visa overhead. I had, I think, I don't really remember, maybe 1 month or 2 months worth of
I think it's 60 days once your H-1B ends.
Okay, yeah, but I had that much salary worth of salary left
Got
for
it.
me
Got it.
alone, and I was just counting down my days, and I had a job offer from a company in New York, or I guess New Jersey, and I was planning to just go over there and work things out. It was not a job that I was looking forward to, and in the middle of that whole period, I just got a cold email from Stefan, who's my co-founder, asking for advice to get to how to hire a technical co-founder, and I think it was his way of also exploring the opportunity whether I wanted to be a technical co-founder with him, and his side of the story is also as fascinating as mine, without the visa complication, obviously. But we met up at a coffee place, and ended up spending about 8 hours, I think, in that coffee house, talking about like our plan and visions for the future, what we think, how I guess how smart we are, and realize that this actually is a dream worth pursuing. I obviously had a huge hurdle to cross, specifically because I went through this whole emotional turmoil. Winding down a startup that you have worked for, that you have put in so much blood and sweat in, is a hard thing, and jumping into another startup was a challenge.
Right.
So I wanted to make sure that the boxes were checked.
Right.
I couldn't expect everything to be answered, but there were certain things, some like personality traits, some things that are just the business model, stuff like that, needed to be in place.
Right.
Before I could take a call. Essentially, Updroid, the experience at Updroid gave me a stepping stone to at least ask those questions. And that helped me make this decision.
Got it. So all the mistakes that you made at Updroid, you wanted to make sure you don't make those mistakes again.
Yeah.
And when you met with Stefan and talked for 8 hours, was the idea? Did Stefan have an idea that you sort of help him explore better, or did you both come up with the idea together during the first meeting?
So Stefan had a really concrete idea of the problem, and I guess in retrospect, that was the thing that sold me really hard, because the depth at which he understood the problem was really good. And at Updroid, we didn't know we didn't know what problem we were solving. It was a really good parallel, because I was at Updroid, I was trying to build a really cool technology, piece of technology, and that took me off guard, and made me realize that technology is not what you should build. You should build a solution, and just having that your gears switch in that direction was and I was also looking out for that, helped me a lot. So when Stefan and I were talking, he had a really good idea of the problem, and he had a good friend who was supposed to be the technical co-founder. They both flushed out the high level, like back of napkin solution for this. And then when both of us met, we over time, and this doesn't happen overnight. Over time, we figured out what exactly should be the approach.
So first meeting with Stefan went well, and you said over time you fleshed out the approach. How much time did you take before you both decided that you wanted to start a company together? And this and the solution that you are going to build?
I think we had a pretty quick turnaround in our decision. I think I was beyond. So I had a chat with I had a chat with Stefan. I had a chat with the lead investor that he had unshackled, and asked about him. And I also had he in reverse had a few of his technical friends I guess interview me about like my technical leadership, and how do I grade in that respect. But overall that process didn't take too long. I think it was maybe 2 weeks, if I'm not wrong. I then as soon as we said yes to each other, I took a impromptu 1 week vacation to Hawaii to just chill out, and enjoy nature. So that was and right after coming back, we actively started working on this.
And one aspect that's asked about again is, what did your parents say? Now that they have seen you go through one startup and you were convinced this is gonna work, and then you do the same thing again.
That's a good question. I think it never, it didn't register too much. I think it was go with the flow.
Okay.
Even then.
Okay. So that was a positive.
It was definitely a positive. I would say like at a high level, I think there is not for this to sound mean. I just feel that I'm lucky in this respect. But building a company is not for everyone. It's not. It's not because someone is smart and someone is not smart. It is a lifestyle choice that you take. It's something that you have to internalize, and not only you, your loved ones also have to internalize that this is a lifestyle that you're choosing. It's equivalent to living in a suburb or living in the city. If you're a city person or a suburb person, there's no right or wrong answer. It's a thing that you enjoy, or it's a thing that you don't enjoy, and it's not for everyone. And it involves your loved ones, people who you care about.
I mean, definitely it's a preference, and sometimes it takes time for people to realize what they want. So you had already worked at Maruti for a few years, and you realize this is not what I want, but you did a startup, and then you decide to do it again. So you know that this is what you want, and this is the kind of life you want to take, and you are okay taking risks. I think it may be difficult for US citizens to appreciate how much risk taking you need to do once you graduate from school with a student, with a big student that your parents have to pay back home if you are not able to, and then you start a company.
Oh, actually, by the way, so I although we were running low on cash, like whatever salary I used to draw, like we had enough, I guess like on H1B you have to draw a certain amount of salary. But whatever I used to draw, I generally had enough savings to still like keep on paying the loan. So even though the risk was that I don't know whether I could keep on paying the loan away or not. But during the time off, I was actually paying off the loan, and by the time I was at Starsky, maybe 6 months or a year out on Starsky, that was when I finally closed all books and everything.
That's awesome, and that just gives you another sort of level of freedom.
Yes, exactly.
So let's go back. So you talked to Stefan, you both decided this is what you're going to work on. And you start building the company. You got first investment, and then did you immediately apply to Y Combinator after that, or did you first build a prototype? What was that timeline?
This was something that I realized later. We did have so Stefan, we actually did. I did not build a prototype before we went into YC. I helped build the at least the technology framework of how we are going to implement this, and it had. We didn't have a lot of. So when I joined, I think this was March. I started in March, I think.
2016.
2016, and we had, I think, a month or so before we had to put in our application. There was no time for me to build anything substantial, and it was mostly idea at that point. I think it was we had a good understanding of the problem, and we had even then we had a good understanding of how we should approach at solving this. There were obviously iterations, but I think we came in with good assumptions, and all those assumptions have actually been proven right. There's always course correction, but the core assumptions have actually stood their test of time.
Okay, cool. So now you are in YC.
Mm-hmm.
Who interviewed you, by the way?
let me know. Okay, so yeah, so we had an interview with Justin Khan, Sam Altman, and there's CFO and
Kirsty Natu?
Yes, Kirsty Natu, yeah.
Okay. Did you have just one interview or multiple?
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Justin was the one who asked the most questions because he had the most relevant information from his cruise investment. Yeah.
Got it. So now you, Stefan, and you are in YC.
Yeah.
Things are going fine. You go to Demoden. I think you raised your seed round right after YC.
Yeah.
What were the early proof points that you wanted to get to before going for sort of next round of fundraising?
I think I won't say that we had anything that we wanted to prove to ourselves, at least because we had a pretty like common sense I guess approach to the whole thing. From my side, I knew that the technology that we're trying to build is buildable. It's not like your side. There are less research problems. Maybe I have not personally implemented something, but I know that cellular communication can happen. I know that like we can build a motor that turns a steering wheel and all of that. So at a basic level, I knew that things can be done. The difference between having that confidence versus actually and converting that into a timeline that can fit in with your fundraising and that can also fit in your product development, while you are also trying to hone in the business side of things. That's the tricky part. So on Stefan's end, he had already spent a lot of time just interviewing different players in the industry and figuring out what the constraints are, how to get to know and get to talk to people who can give us access to, let's say, drugs. You cannot just go and get it done.
Yeah.
So he was working on that end of things, so we mostly were focusing on defining these milestones and trying to at least stay focused on what our eventual goal is, which was solving the problem of removing the person from the vehicle. Yeah.
Got it. And then you sort of hit some of these milestones.
Yeah.
And when did you raise Series A?
We raised the first money in was right before Christmas 2017.
Okay.
Right before Christmas 2017, officially everything got closed, signed. Maybe February 2018.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's been more than a year, and assuming you're building a bigger team.
Yeah.
And you haven't worked outside of Maruti. You haven't worked at bigger companies in the valley.
No.
So really, and this is a deeply technical problem.
Yes.
So it's not a social app. So there is
Yeah.
less design. Maybe there's less UI design and all those things, but it is deeply technical.
Yeah.
You have to make things work, otherwise people may die if the truck goes sideways or something like that. So how did you go about building the team, and how have you been managing as a first time sort of CTO of like a larger team?
Yeah. So building the team, I think there can be different styles to it. I think generally it goes. It follows the same trajectory. There are certain things that you do that are not meant to scale, as the YC saying goes. Do things that don't scale at first. So there are certain things that you do that are not meant to scale, even in team building. And one of the things that I realized was specifically for this, you need to listen to your gut feeling.
Okay.
It doesn't scale at all. You cannot explain why you like one person versus the other, but when you only have to hire one other person, it works really well. There are, like, looking back, you can figure out a lot of reasons why a person worked or a person didn't work. But yeah, you have to listen to your gut feeling. you would also make mistakes. That also doesn't scale, but you have to make mistakes in hiring. That would be one of the biggest things that you will learn. And no one can, even I'm like technically giving advice, but no one can give you an advice that you can just follow and do the right thing all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the first step in figuring out, and then going forward, you have to just try to formalize it as much as you can. I won't say that this needs to be written down right away. The more you can formalize this, the more scalable you make building your team. But at the end of the day, there's a trade-off between how much how fast you want to move and how much process oriented you need to be.
And do you still interview, like do you do the final interview for every technical hire in the company?
Yes, yeah, we have two today.
Okay.
Yes.
We saw some people downstairs also. Okay, and the more interesting one is, did you have to fire anyone?
Yes. So at Updroid, I had to fire that was my first fire. It was looking back, I think it was a relatively simple one. There were no complications in it. It just because it was the first one, it was more nervous or nerve-wracking at that point. There were more difficult firings that I had to do at Starsky. And in general, to your question about like being a first-time manager, I think that was a big challenge. I think my philosophy, I guess, in this context is trying to make sure that we are really merit-based and that's annoying.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry. Yeah. So it's so we at least I try to be really merit-based, which also means that there is an extra burden on me to figure out what that merit is. Someone doing their job is there at a high level makes sense, but at some point you have to like boil that down into how fast did we do? Did they actually do a good job at their job? And were there things that they did they like share the same work culture values? Is that compatible with me or with the other team members and all of that? Coming to that conclusion is really hard, and the first time I had to do that, that was actually really hard.
Yeah, that's one of the very common things that I've heard from first time people, from first time managers, is firing someone. It's so emotionally challenging, and it's so draining. Not just you are still fine, but the person who you are firing, it's very difficult for them. And I think as you mentioned, you have to objectively make decisions, especially at a startup. It needs to be merit based. You need to make sure that you have evaluated all possible angles, and then you are making that decision. And still it's very difficult. Like, it doesn't mean it becomes easy.
And I would also say the same thing. Like, you can also think about this in a non-scalable fashion. Like, you don't actually have to prove anything. It might be a good internal goal for you to have an objective set of reasons why you are going to fire someone. But if you don't have like all the I's dotted and T's crossed, it's still like at a small scale, it is still okay, because you don't have a concrete work culture defined.
Right.
It is still subjective. You still go through your gut feeling, and if things are not like meshing well, it is a fine reason. It is an okay reason to fire, because like small differences will like in like geometry, like small angles like when stretched out too long will create a huge division.
Right, that's actually a very good point. So that's why people say if things are not working out, fire as soon as possible. And then the impact it has on a team is basically compounds.
Yes,
you
exactly.
also don't want to have that. Now that's definitely something that I guess like a better way of putting it is small differences become big later on. So now you have like done 2 startups and also hired a team, 5 people. You have all these learnings. In all of this, just to touch on when you got started, where was Updroid based, by the way? Was it
in the Bay Area.
In the Bay Area. Did you have to sort of do something different to build a network? Because most people moving either to the Bay Area or somewhere in the US from other countries may not have a readily available network to plug into.
So I don't think I did anything different than anyone else. I think coming to the Bay Area was essentially good. I think anyone who is remotely thinking about this should come to the Bay Area. I mean, it's like, although it's like it is getting overcrowded, but
expensive.
Yes, and expensive. But I think it's still a good bet because there is. I mean, I don't know if this is an official term, but there's a networking infrastructure already available and been built specifically to help entrepreneurs, and you can tap into it. If you do hustle a little bit, you can actually tap into it really well. It also if you are serious about building a company, you need to tap into like that part of your skill set. You can just be technical and sit in a cubicle, work on something, and then suddenly someone will discover you. You have to network, and there is some like some bit of brute force involved in it, and then I think at least back at Updroid, I think I tried a bunch of different methods, all the way from meetups to I think incubator in itself is a pretty good like jumpstart. You get a good jumpstart. Like YC is a big one, but like if you get into any other incubators, you at least get that jump. There is a lot of learnings, and in general you get how the world works and all of that. So there are like well-defined methods that people can use for networking.
And that sometimes that makes the difference. Like you get in touch with Stefan and meeting the right co-founder just made all the difference. So networking, like getting out of your comfort zone, you talk to people, to meet people, to learn new things. Is very crucial. Cool. So now things are going well. I think you also maybe announced a few months ago that you did the first driverless 7-mile stretch.
Yeah, this was I think a year ago now.
Okay. So I'm sure like the miles are increasing. So in your very risky journey into the startup world in the US, are there any specific things, any specific pieces of advice you'd like to give other immigrant or non-immigrant founders who are trying to make it in the tech world?
I think I would like, one of the things I would definitely repeat is that starting a company is not for everyone, and this is not at all coming from any smug place or any judgmental place. This is a literal fact of life. This is something that you need to decide that this is a lifestyle that you want to pursue, and you need to be like, decisive about it. You cannot hedge your bets at all. It would be, if you are comfortable with all or none situation, which a lot of people will not be that like they shouldn't.
Right.
It is a lifestyle,
Yeah.
and you have to like stick to it, essentially. So that is a particular thing that I think everyone should just appreciate about startups, and before getting into it, they should appreciate that this is the lifestyle that they're choosing. In terms of just the risk level, I think a good thing that I don't have a good answer for, but a good thing to just know and keep an eye out for is the level of or is the amount of risk you are taking, not just in one dimension. There are like multiple dimensions of risk. Like some of them can be personal risk, some of them can be financial risk, some of them can actually be the product, technology, business risk, and identifying all those dimensions and then figuring out which all of those risks do you have control on, and which you don't, and what all risks can you actually affect. That is in general a good exercise. I won't say that I don't know where that sweet spot of decision boundary happens, but it is different for different people. But I think just knowing that there is that there are different dimensions of risk, and some of them you can affect directly. Like for me, I can very much know that that technology might be a risk, but I know how to solve it, or at least I know what needs to be done, or what cannot be done. Market, I don't exactly know, like how it will evolve. That is a risk that I might not be that comfortable taking. Some people are comfortable taking market risk because they know they can they do enough marketing, or like they are better at this, or just reading the pulse of the market. So they can do that better, and they might have better confidence. So risk has more to do with lack of information for the future in different directions, and some people are confident in one versus the other. So yeah.
So you'd say pick your battle. Basically, if you decide to do a startup, you know what you're getting yourself into, and then have a good sense of all the risks you are taking at various stages, either of a startup or of life, and then be okay with those risks, and don't try to impact the risks that you cannot change. For example, visa risk. You cannot change. If it's a lottery, it's a lottery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a risk to it. Considering the fact that this will be an all or none thing, how does that impact? One other thing is, this is just an analogy. Like this, you just need to. The reason why I don't have a good answer for this, and I think no one should have a good answer for this, is because if you, I think someone at YC told me this, is that if you do a very highly detailed analysis of what are the risks and what are the risk benefit things, almost certainly you would realize that doing a startup is wrong. Is not beneficial. It's not a good long-term investment. There's no way if a startup is worthwhile pursuing, you would always come out with the conclusion that it's you shouldn't actually invest your time in it. And that's just the nature of things.
Cool. That was super helpful, and thank you for taking out the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah.